morning from paradise, my fellow degens and crypto paradise surf community members. I come to you with a very important public service announcement for today that you are not going to want to miss. Fortunately, Nick is dealing with some car issues right now. I think he's registering a new car. I don't know what the heck he's doing. He's not able to make the live stream, but that is okay. He will be back with us tomorrow. I am here today to tell you guys that it's all going to be all right. It's all going to be all right, guys. We have lived through these dips before. We've lived through the panic sells, the manipulation, the market crashes, the multi-year bear markets. We've lived through it all. And yet here we are still kicking and screaming at the top of our lungs to hodl, hodl, hodl. So, yeah, a couple things to get to today. I want to cover, first of all, how does one cope with days and weeks like this? There's different strategies you can employ. Okay, different ways to sort of get through it. I know it's not easy. I'm going through it too. We're all in this together, guys. That's just the fact of how these markets operate. So there's different strategies. We'll cover some of that a little bit. We'll cover where we think things are going. Are we going to reverse here soon? We're close to that $3,900 level that Nick's been talking about on Ethereum that may spark an uptrend here soon. So we'll see when that materializes. I think sooner rather than later. And I have a couple project-specific updates for you guys. You know, Quants AI, which was a project that we invested in, going almost a year ago, and then we just opened up a strategic round for the Surf Down members, was supposed to launch today. Quants was supposed to launch today. And sometimes the crypto gods smile on you, and a delay happens, or something happens, and I mean, because if they had launched today, it would have been a bloodbath. So I'm glad they have a little bit delay. They're working on some partnership or something like that. They're working through some stuff, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Let's let them get their ducks in a row. Let's let the market recover a little bit. We want certainly any new coins. You want to be launching to an uptrend. So Quants was supposed to launch today, got delayed, but I'm perfectly fine with that, as you guys should be as well. All right, so look, we just had another flush out, another, I'd say, leverage washout. I mean, the crypto's become like 70 or 80% of the trading is just going on these derivatives, these leverage trading futures platforms or perpetual futures. And what's happened is I think it's increased the level of volatility to some degree. Remember, these exchanges, they only make money when they liquidate you. That's how they make their money. And so they will manipulate the price up or down depending on if they see a lot of longs. They will, they'll try to crash the price. Conversely, if they see a lot of shorts, they'll end up pumping it. So there's a lot of manipulation going on. That's not a new story necessarily. We covered that in depth a few days ago. Evidence came out that Binance and Wintermute, they're, I think, the most flagrant violators when it comes to market manipulation, that they were the ones doing this. So another leverage washout, I think, happens yesterday. I think we're also sort of, we're in a weird phase right now. We had a big run up leading up to the Fed rate cut. And it sort of ended up being a buy the rumor, sell the news scenario. We warned that might happen. We warned that depending on what Powell says, the market could either react favorably to these rate cuts in the near term, or they could react negatively. Long term, the rate cuts, I think, are nothing but bullish. But in the short term, I mean, we're 1 week out, right, from the Fed decision and the speech. And in fact, Powell gave a speech just yesterday that was apparently even more hawkish, perhaps contributing to the further market weakness we're seeing sell-off in the stock market as well. But it came down to Powell's speech, and it came down to sort of this buy the rumor, sell the news. So we had that going on with the rate cuts. I think there's right now, because of what he said at the press conference when the rate cut happened, and then yesterday he did some speech somewhere, I think there's a question percolating in the minds of market participants of whether the Fed is truly aligned around further rate cuts, or are they still just so concerned about this bogus inflation that they're going to put a pause on the cuts. The scary thought is that there were a number of Fed governors that, they're staunchly against cuts. So it wasn't a unanimous thing. So what's going to happen end of October when the Fed meets again and makes a decision? Well, despite all the sort of equivocation and Powell, oh, we're still worried about inflation, and yesterday he said the stock market's probably valued too high. I mean, God, just shut your mouth, man. Um, Despite everything he's saying, I think there's going to be enough consensus and majority decision around another 25 basis point cut. And if you look at poly market, I mean, the market is sort of anticipating as well. I think we're around 80% of those predicting that we are going to get a rate cut end of October. But right now, there's a little bit of trepidation. There's a little bit of skepticism, I think, in the market of as whether this is going to happen. And that's because Powell, when he opens his mouth, he creates a lot of uncertainty, right? And I guess, he's a politician. He doesn't want to speak uncertainties. He wants to keep things vague and ambiguous. Markets don't like that. So, sort of a little bit of a little scared vibe around the next rate cut, I guess you could say, that may be contributing to the market sell-off. But look, we just went on a ginormous run on Ethereum. I mean, we are up over 100% from the lows at around 1,500 that were put in only a few months ago. And then, of course, the ETH strategic reserve narrative comes into full play. All these institutions are buying it up. Markets prices rising. The ETFs inflows start coming in, and everyone says we're going to 10,000. I do think we are going to 10,000, but we're taking a breather here. We're taking a breather, and we showed you guys the chart from 2017 and what happened in September of 2017 and what's happening in September of 2025. Eerily similar charts. Big sell-off in September. It's funny. September is historically a red month in crypto, but we came out of the gates early September, just rocking and rolling. We were running, and September was going to end up being green. If September ended like a week ago, I think we're going to end up actually slightly red or maybe neutral or just maybe slightly up for Bitcoin in September. So historically on trend here, but I don't view that as necessarily a bad thing because that would then lead to an explosive October, right? Historically, that's what's always happened. 8 out of the last 10 Octobers have been double-digit gains for Bitcoin. The stock market does well at the end of the year. There's a bunch of reasons for this. And we're aligned perfectly with, the further rate cuts, quantitative easing, so on and so forth. So I am not worried. Hold on to your hats here, guys. This is another leverage washout. Maybe a little bit of scared and spooky vibes around the next rate cut. What's going to happen. I'm still firmly in the camp of they are going to end up cutting the rates. Although we will see, look, we're going to get some data coming out. We always get the CPI data, the PPI data, the labor market readings. We haven't gotten those yet for the upcoming readings, of course. And so that will, weigh on what the Fed does. But my guess is we continue to see weakness in the labor market. That's not something that a 25 basis point cut is going to solve in a week. Companies are only going to feel like they are able to hire again. The real estate market is only going to come back to life. Bullish vibes are only going to really come back when there are sustained multiple cuts and a clear trajectory on where that's going. And right now the Fed, based on what Powell said, is just, they're not giving us a lot of clarity. They still want to dig in their heels and talk about this phantom inflation. Look, we're a little bit above 2%. Big whoop. Big whoop. Inflation fears are not anchored. I don't think there's a lot of businesses or individuals out there thinking that inflation is really a big problem anymore and that it's going to keep going. So labor market should be their main concern. And let's see if they do the right thing. So anyway, we have a few more data points coming out, but I'm firmly in the camp. They are going to come around and do the right thing, and they are going to cut in October. And we'll see too, there's other parts of the Fed policy that have been a little bit confusing because on one hand they cut the rates, on the other hand they continue to sell off their investments, their treasuries that they hold. And so, on one hand they're doing quantitative easing, on one hand they're arguably still tightening, right? But Powell was asked about that, and his response is basically, the selling that we're doing of these treasuries is nominal. It's not going to impact much. It's barely any money, and I guess in Fed terms, it's probably not. And so I think that's a bit of a nothing burger, a bit of a red herring here. People shouldn't get too distracted by that and should focus on the rate cuts and ultimately the trajectory of the rate cuts, where things going to go in the next 6 months from now. I think rates are going to go down. You have Stephen Mirren saying 2.5% is where the target is. Other Fed governors are very dovish, and then you have some, maybe it's political, that maybe they want Trump to fail and they are digging in their heels. So let's just see what happens. I'm still bullish on rate cuts coming October and December. Clear trajectory, and okay, we're in a good spot. The other interesting thing that's happening I want to talk about here is the stock market still ripping and roaring, gold ripping and roaring. Why hasn't it trickled down into crypto and Bitcoin? Well, these things take a bit of time. Bitcoin and crypto are considered the most risk on of the risk on, right? And unless there is a clear trajectory on quantitative easing, rate cuts, we get a few of them in a row, I think, investors are looking at the less risky of the risk assets, or they're looking at the hedge, the traditional hedge of gold. I think China might be playing a big role in it because they're pushing their gold narrative heavily over there. But I guess the point is, it's been a week since the rate cuts. Yes, the stock market's doing well. Yes, gold's doing well. Let's give it a bit of time before it trickles down into crypto. I think it will happen once we get a clear signal on, where this quantitative easing and where this cycle is going. So yeah, for those, because I'm seeing these voices out there on crypto Twitter. Oh, the stock market's running, gold's running. What's happening to crypto and Bitcoin? Hold on, guys. It's been a week. Calm down. Not to mention our market's highly, highly, highly manipulated. You can't do what CZ and Binance is doing to Bitcoin. You can't do that in the traditional, financial markets. So we're dealing with these 100x perpetuals and market makers liquidating to pay their bills. I read a story yesterday. The exchanges are making 70 or 80% of their profits now from perpetuals. So this is a story. This is a big trend, and obviously we see Aster running, Hyperliquid. I mean, this is the narrative right now because sadly enough, retail, they just can't get enough of the gambling, can they? Get rich quick, 100x leverage. Good luck to you, bro. Good luck to you. Have fun staying poor. That's all I say to that. So this is the market we're existing in. Highly manipulated, a lot of leverage traders. And that's not the case in the traditional market. So let's just, again, let these rate cuts sort of play out. Let's let the story of quantitative easing really take a firm foothold here. And we'll see some data coming out in the interim between now and the October meeting that will either further demonstrate that they are going to cut rates, or hey, we got to be worried here if inflation bounces back out of the blue, which seems highly, highly unlikely, or if the labor market comes roaring back, which is again highly unlikely. So the trajectory and the trend is going to continue. Bad labor market, low inflation. Powell, cut the damn rates again, man, and stop equivocating. So, all right, that's enough of the Fed talk. That's enough of macros. I want to switch gears and talk to you guys for a few minutes about what do you do when the market is crashing? How do you handle it? Because, man, when we say don't get shaken out, we're serious. There's a lot of people out there, whether they're just holding spot, whether they're messing around with perpetuals, whether they're in memes. When the market crashes like this, they get scared and either get flushed out because they got too much leverage, or they panic sell. Guys, unless we are now in fact starting a multi-year bear market, which would make zero sense given the fact that the Fed is cutting rates and we're starting a new cycle now finally of quantitative easing. But unless we're starting a multi-year bear market, now is not the time to panic sell. Now is the time to hodl, buy the dips, maybe consolidate some of your holdings. Maybe if you have some alts that are showing extreme weakness right now, a handful that are showing some strength, maybe you consolidate, get rid of some dead weight. I don't know. That's a fine strategy as well. But we're going to bounce higher here, and so you just have to hold. And so, but how do you do that, right? Like, how do you manage that from an emotional standpoint when it feels like the world's ending, your portfolio's in the red, you had money yesterday in the account and now there's less. How do you handle it? Well, first of all, you take a breath and you just kind of get out of the moment, okay? And you think a couple things. Think first, one, what is my time horizon here? What was my strategy going into this trade? Did I buy this asset with the intention of holding for a day, a week, a month, a year, multiple years, multiple decades, right? Remind yourself, what was your strategy? Hopefully, maybe you even wrote it down. Some people I know when they first get into crypto recognition is, hey, write down your strategy. Put it in a spreadsheet, right? What's your conviction level on this asset? And if you are in a long-term hold, well, hey, you got nothing to worry about. Okay, I feel a bit better. I'm looking at my Bitcoin, right? Here's a prime example. You guys know me. For better or worse, I'm diamond handing my Bitcoin. Moon or dust, whatever. I think it's going to $1 million in the next 10 years. So I'm holding that shit through thick and thin. Hopefully gonna, donate some of it to my kids or bequeath it to my kids later on so they have financial freedom. That's my goal with Bitcoin. And so when price goes down, we have a bit of correction, I'm not panicking, I'm not worried because my time horizon is ultra long. Conversely, you think about some memes you may hold. You think about some random alts you may hold. Okay, those you can look on an individual basis. Are they still active? Are they still community still there? Teams building, yada yada. Narrative is still aligned with what I think the market is excited about these days. And if it checks the boxes, then I think probably find a hold because in all likelihood, when the market comes back, so will that altcoin. But not all altcoins are created equal. Some are going to die. Many will die. In fact, majority will eventually die if your time horizon is 10 years. But look at some of the underperforming ones. Why are they underperforming? Is the community gone? Leadership gone? Tech is not viable? Whatever the case may be, I think it's that's okay to look at that and say maybe it's time to exit that position. Here's the other thing I did. Outside of just reviewing my strategy, reminding myself long term, okay, don't worry, blah blah blah. Touch grass. And I know we say that all the time. I know it's a tongue-in-cheek thing here in crypto, but I live by it, man. I absolutely live by it. And maybe people hear that term and they think literally, go outside and play in the grass in the fields. No, I mean, look, maybe for some people, that's what you do to de-stress, and that's what you do to take your minds off the markets, whatever. But I think touch grass, of course, can mean many, many different things to many, many different people. Everyone's going to have their own touch grass kind of activities that they like to do, whether that's spending time with friends, with family. I like to cook, so I'm gonna fire up a roast here. Weather's getting kind of shitty where I'm at. I'm gonna fire up a roast because why not? Take my mind off the markets, do something I like. I've been fortunate enough. My kids are back in school. I got time finally to go to the gym again. Okay, I'm going to go to the gym for a little bit. These are just examples, little things you can do. Maybe you want to connect with an old friend. I just reminded myself. I got an old friend. He lives in London. He just had a kid. I got to call him later. What a great day to do that. Because there ain't shit going on in the markets. There's nothing to do. I'm not fielding a lot of business calls. Obviously we're full-time crypto. We are reliant, the business is reliant on the market doing well for us to, be busy. And sadly enough, that's not the case. So, hey, what a great time to call my old friend and have a catch up. So anyway, find different things. Touch grass. Step away from the charts. Step away from crypto Twitter, right? Step away from Telegram for a little bit. It can get toxic, man. Like the social media sites outside of their general normal level of toxicity, which I won't get into that discussion. But when the market's red, I mean, that's when the bears come out. And that's when the fear-mongering comes out. And that's when you're going to start to hear voices, I told you 124,000 was the top. You should have sold then. Well, you're better off selling now than when you wait till Bitcoin's at 60,000. You're going to start to see tweets like that. And look, if that was your mindset, and that's how you operate in these markets, you're not going to make it multiple cycles. You are not going to actually make much money in crypto because you'll just sell every dip. You'll panic sell the dips, and if you panic sell the dips, you won't make money. So Be like CZ, hold long term. The only way to do that, I think, is frankly to avoid social media on these days to the extent possible. Find ways to touch grass. Many of you have normal jobs, I'm sure, which is great. That's a good thing. Stay working at your normal job. This is not the time to go full time crypto, I don't think. Stay busy, touch grass, hang out with friends, family, whatever the case may be. Just step away from the charts, step away from social media. I think through some of the big crashes, and this is not even a big crash. This is just another day in crypto, another red day in crypto due to leverage longs getting flushed out by market manipulators. So nothing new to see here, but I remember, we lived through some genuinely scary moments, right? Some genuinely scary ones. Let me just think back. The one couple that stand out, it was sort of one after the next, right? It was after the 2021 massive bull run, right? Everyone made a bunch of money, at least in the beginning. But then in 2022, we start the crash, we start the correction. At the time, you don't really know what's going on, whatever. And then I think in May, that was when Terra Luna, that was doing that scammy, stable coin earning you 20%. What a fugazi thing. I never touched it because I was like this. If something sounds too good to be true, it's too good to be true and it's a scam. So just to avoid it. So I avoided it. But in any event, that thing blew up, I think in May, and the market crashes, right? Oh, fuck. Okay, here we go. And then only a few short months later, the market keeps going down, down, down. Then in November 22, of course, that's when the FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, it starts with CZ, doing a tweet, kind of calling into question the holdings, the viability of FTX, and our customer funds there and everything. And, within a matter of days, that whole thing had imploded. And, people had lost billions. The market crashed. We were probably, I don't know, $4,000 or $5,000 Bitcoin or something like that. I can pull up the chart. But we had just retraced all the way back to, the lows of the lows that cycle. Or maybe it was $15,000 Bitcoin, excuse me. Whatever it was. Crashed. And, that was, I don't want to call it an existential moment because crypto was had survived enough by that point that I don't think the FTX debacle was going to take down the entire industry. But, in the back of your mind, you're sort of thinking, well, does this mean Biden and the overzealous regulators are going to basically try to shut down the industry because this one bad actor lost a lot of customer funds? Are they going to come after Coinbase? Are they going to come after every centralized exchange? Are they going to try to say that, self-custody is now illegal? Bitcoin's illegal. We got to protect the citizens. Ban Bitcoin. It wasn't a great chance that happened, but in the back of your mind, maybe, So it was a scary time. It was a super scary time. But you know what we did through it? You know what we did here at Crypto Paradise? We held. Just held through the shit. Remind yourself, hey, my time horizon's 5 years. My time horizon's 10 years. Do I really think that in 5 or 10 years, Bitcoin's going to be lower than the current price it is now? Probably not. So just held on. And of course, the rest is history. Michael Saylor steps up to the plate. The ETFs get approved. BlackRock comes into the fore. Trump wins the election, and we're smashed above all-time highs, $100,000 Bitcoin, $124,000, and now we're hearing a little bit of a dip, and who gives a shit? We're going to be fine. Long story short, we've lived through much scarier, much more existentially scarier moments, and we held on. And I think that's the only way you're going to survive in this industry and truly make money in this industry, because if not, you're going to just take so many losses that you're never gonna make any profits outside of those 3 months of an alt season where everyone makes a bit of money. So long story short, we've lived through way worse. Remind yourself of that. Remind yourself of the times you diamond handed. Remind yourself, hey, I can do this again. It actually wasn't that hard. One of my favorite lines in Lord of the Rings: "This too shall pass. This too shall pass." Right? Any bad thing that's happening in your life, could be your portfolio down or something far worse than that. Let's just be honest. This is just numbers on a screen and money. The worst things can happen in life. This too shall pass. So this moment, having a red day, this shall pass, will be green before you know it. And then the only thing you'll be doing is kicking yourself for not buying the dip. Or if you sold, you'll be kicking yourself for panic selling. So that's the other thing that I like to do is remind myself, live through worse. It's going to be fine. This too shall pass. The other thing that I think is important, and it's something you should have done in advance of any kind of crash, is just be diversified, right? And I know that's not possible for everybody because not everybody has the money to have a diversified portfolio, and that's okay. You'll get there. And I think in the beginning, it does make sense to take more risks. You're going to have a more concentrated portfolio, maybe in some high conviction altcoins that you think can do 5, 10, 20, 100x. I get it. So not everyone has the money to be fully diversified. But if you do have the money, I think it pays to have some money in the stock market. I think I'm kicking myself not having a little bit more gold. I got a gold, chain or some shit, but that's not real gold. I'm kicking myself not having more gold. I should have had some gold. Should have been more diversified, right? Maybe real estate, That's always something that goes up slowly over time. And so when you think of things in that perspective, and you look across your entire investment portfolio, what you'll often find is, one asset or one asset class is underperforming at a given moment in time, but hey, look, this one's doing pretty well. And so given that, my total net worth hasn't really been impacted that much. And I don't feel that bad anymore because I looked across everything and, okay, well, maybe I'm down 5-10% for my, net worth. I was, my all-time high net worth was, let's say, probably mine was August 24th when it hit like nearly 5,000. But, so I'm down off of that. But hey, my stocks are up. I know, the value of my, real estate that you may have, value of your retirement accounts, whatever the hold, probably stocks and bonds, whatever. Those are probably up. Those are probably up since, a month ago because the stock market's at all-time highs. Real estate grinds up slowly over time. Every month it probably is going up a small percentage. So in any event, you look across, you say, hey, I'm diversified, and now I have a bit more peace of mind, and I'm not so worried about this one asset that's underperforming at any given moment in time. Because remember, things move in cycles. And what is going to happen is, at some point, the capital, it's going to flow down. It's going to flow from the less risky, golds, S&P 500s, NVIDIA, the Magnificent Seven has really captured most of the stock market gains. Eventually, it will slow down into the, quote, riskier asset classes as we get more confirmation of quantitative easing. That we're actually moving away from QT and truly moving into QE right now. Powell is not really stating that they're fully, going with the QE. He's kind of, we'll see, data dependent, blah, blah, blah. So we need more confirmation. Once we get, a few more months of confirmation, I do think we're off to the races, Bitcoin-wise, Ethereum-wise, altcoin-wise. And I think this is going to be a distant memory. So, a few things you do. Be diversified. Touch some grass. Remember the bad moments. You got through those. You can get through this. And I think everything's going to be fun. Let's just actually head over to the chat here because we have a few guests popping in. Moonmutt, Martin. Great to see you guys. Thank you for joining in. I'm sorry Nick is not here. He's dealing with his car. Hey, sometimes life gets in the way of rambling about the financial markets for an hour. But he'll be back tomorrow. Any questions you guys may have, feel free to jump into the chat here. One final thing I'll leave you guys with, because it's a conversation I'm seeing over and over on crypto Twitter and Telegram, etc. It's, okay, let's talk alt season, and is this alt season going to be like all the others? Where, majority or, many alts for at least that brief period of time did do extremely well. And like everything's going up 5, 10x, whatever. Do I think that we're going to get our exact repeat of that? Yeah, I'm starting to think no. I'm really starting to think no. Because, logically, the market's changed dramatically. We know this. And that's why, we've been on record saying we think the 4-year halving cycle is probably broken. The market's changed. We're now focused on leverage trading. Blah, blah, blah. So why is it that the alt season would be an exact replica and mirror the previous ones? It doesn't logically make sense from that standpoint. The other reason it doesn't make sense is there's been this massive proliferation of shitcoins and altcoins because of how easy it is to launch them now, right? We didn't have Pump Fun and all the derivative versions of Pump Fun across all the other chains. We didn't have that in DeFi summer of 2021. We certainly didn't have that in 2017. I mean, 2017 it was like there was like 200 altcoins. That's it, because like it was very much the mindset at that time was basically copying how Wall Street operated. You do these like giant raises, $30 million ICO, no DEXs. DEXs didn't exist, only centralized exchange. You had to pay them to get listed. I mean, completely different, right? And then 21, completely different from today. And so there's just so many altcoins. Logically, it does not make sense that all of them are going to pump at one moment in time. Just doesn't make sense. Now, I mean, a lot, liquidity bonding, the fact that if a lot of the pools, the LP pools, are, the native token from the project tied and paired with Ethereum or tied and paired with Solana, whatever. So there is going to be LP bonding that drags things up a bit. So things will start to go and improve, but I don't think it's going to be everything does it 10 times, everything does 100 times. It was never really that anyway. I mean, if I think back like 2021, there was maybe we had like when we invested in like 50 ICOs, 50 pre-sales, whatever, maybe even more. I mean, it was just ridiculous how many we were doing. Maybe 10% actually did really, really well, and the other ones did shit. Like honestly, maybe at the time it didn't feel that way because the ones that did well did so well, 100x's, 50x's, things like that, that it was kind of like you weren't even, whatever. I mean, money was so easy. It was so easy to make money at that time, so just keep investing, keep going. But the reality is, it wasn't a 100 out of 100 ICOs did super well. It was like 10%. And so, yeah, I think alt season, it will come. Everything is going to do better. I mean, everything is going to start pumping a bit just due to liquidity bonding. But not everything's going to 100x. I mean, to find the 100x's, it really does take a special sort of alchemy, elements coming together. There is a lot of luck to it. If we're just being honest, I know there's some people that are great at gem hunting and maybe they can outperform, but there is a lot of luck to it. What to me really stands out in my mind is let's call it narrative market fit. The altcoins that are going to do 100x, and look, we just saw with Aster, right? And obviously that had CZ backing it, etc. But why did it do well? Why did CZ back it? Well, its narrative, its product is completely aligned with what the market wants right now, which are these perpetual futures, DEX platforms, right? And so built that's what it is. CZ gets behind it. Okay, it does super well. And just think about this logically. If that was an NFT platform, NFTs are so dead right now, that of course CZ would never talk about it. It would have gone to zero, and that would have been the end of it. You never heard of it. So narrative market fit, that's really super important for finding these runners here when alt season does finally come. And then of course, just like, how good is the team? Are they able to execute? Are they active on social media? Do they have the right connections to get listed on the big exchanges? Do they use the right market makers? Did they, make a series of good decisions and didn't fuck over their investors? I mean, there was a lot of malfeasance and just negligence and just bad practices across the industry that, majority of teams, I think, whether out of ignorance or whether out of, malintent, just end up fucking their investors over one way or another. And I think a lot of it's not intentional. How many hacks have we seen? How many, my wall, I had money in my wall, or, tokens, team tokens sit on a MetaMask, gets hacked, was it on purpose? Did the guy, dump it himself? Probably not, but that's negligence, right? That's just straight bad security practice. That's just negligence. There's a lot of that when you're talking about, especially low cap projects with smaller teams, maybe less experienced people. You start to get into the project's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And, you expect a bit better. But even them, like look what happened to Cetify the other day. Seedify is a pretty well-known launch pad. If you're familiar with pre-sales and launch pads, you probably heard the words. You probably heard the name Seedify. They're big in gaming in the last cycle. They're pretty well respected. And what happens the other day? I think a bridge that they were using got hacked. Some sort of hack happened, bridge related, and bam, bunch of money stolen, millions of dollars are stolen, all those tokens are sold, and you're down like 50% in an hour. So man, this industry is full of minefields, and it's low caps probably more susceptible to it. Even mid caps, it can happen too. Yeah, I just think alt season. It's not going to come for every project. You're gonna need that. You need that product market fit, that narrative market fit. Right now, everyone's focused on these perpetuals platforms. And one reason we like quants is it's kind of adjacent to that. I don't want to digress too much, but quants, I talked about them earlier in the stream. An AI project, essentially it's vaults where you deposit your money and then they do trades on your behalf. So it's not the high octane, high leverage, 100x. Let's try to turn $100 into $1 million. Bunch of BS. It's much more just consistent, conservative type platform, but it is decentralized. It is about investing. It's investing in trading, which is what Hyperliquid and Aster are fundamentally about as well. So adjacent to that kind of category, is something that we're bullish on. But these narratives, they come and go, and they come and go quick. I mean, RWAs were hot for a while. AI was hot for a while. Right now, we're in the kind of perpetuals moment in time here. We'll probably have a bunch more copycats coming out. Anyway, so find the narrative that fits the market. Do your due diligence. See if the team knows what they're doing. See if the product's good. And you can find some winners and you can outperform. But I just don't think alt season is going to be everything does it 10 or 100 times. So just be aware of that. I mean, if you're looking across your holdings right now, like I'm looking at you, Ron. I know you have a lot of altcoins, and a lot of them are underperformed, sadly enough. Maybe look across and say, hey, what do we think can actually rebound here? And I know it's tough because it's hard to predict what the next narrative is going to be, right? Like, I remember, memes were doing really well last summer. Are they going to make a comeback? It's kind of anyone's guess, right? I mean, and then within memes, is it going to be dog memes? Is it going to be Matt Fury memes? Is it going to be cats? Is it going to be what? These are tough things to sort of figure out. But long story short, alt season will come. I do not think it's going to come for every single project. I think it's going to come for certain categories, and we'll probably cycle through the narratives as well, right? If you think back to 2021, it wasn't NFTs the whole time. That came later, right? Because I view NFTs as the most risk-on of the risk-on, because they're essentially illiquid. They're essentially just collector's items that we decided that were going to be worth something in certain cases. But it started with gaming. It really started with DeFi. And that ran its course for 6 months or whatever. Staking was hot, yield farming, all this new tech was coming. Then we moved into it's GameFi. Okay, now Axie Infinity broke out, and everyone was like, gaming's the next hot thing, and that ran its course for 6 months. And then it was NFTs. I remember a bunch of NFT platforms coming out. Okay, we'll invest in these, and NFTs are hot, and blah blah. So it goes through cycles, 3 to 6 month cycles. When the bull market's finally here, right now can't even really talk about narratives too much, outside of maybe Aster doing well, because alts have just completely underperformed, Bitcoin and Ethereum, basically, BNB. So we're still in big cap season. But in any event, there is going to be these narratives. Are going to come and go. They're going to shift. We'll do our best. We're going to keep our finger on the pulse and try to anticipate for you and try to sort of identify some good ones for you guys. I do feel shitty about Aster because I saw Aster. I know CZ was promoting it, and I just I faded it. And we didn't talk about it on the channel. We probably should have. But I'm always a little skeptical of these ones that sort of come out of the blue and, just skyrocket immediately. And it's if you don't find about it early, the risk is pretty dramatic that, you're going to be finding about it too late, and that's when the correction happens. But I guess with Aster and CZ and how they operate with great supply control, And apparently the product's really good too, and better tokenomics and hyperliquid, et cetera, et cetera. That's one we probably shouldn't have faded. Being perfectly honest with you guys, but hey, we'll find the next. But anyway, we're gonna keep our finger on the pulse, try to anticipate the narratives for you guys. But we ain't there yet. We ain't there yet. Alt season's nowhere near. I think here. I mean, yeah, one runner doesn't make an alt season. But one good altcoin that outperformed in the past like 2 months, and the main reason was because CZ started showing it. Well, let's just be honest. If he didn't promote it, then most people wouldn't even know what it was. So one runner an alt season does not make, and so we're not there yet. I think we're still in kind of big cap season. Once the market finally does turn around here, we've been on record saying Ethereum's got to be like above $5,000 consistently, not like a little wick up, and then it's 4,900 across most exchanges, but somewhere it was 5,000 for 1 second. That does not count. I mean consistently above $5,000 ETH. That's a psychological level. That's an all-time high. I think at that point you start to see people get very risk on, and alts will really start to move. But we're not there yet. I mean, hell, we're below now $4,000. So go in the wrong direction, goddammit. But hey, we got this. We got this. Like Roan said. Remember, touch grass. Remember, be diversified. Remember those times that you've lived through the shit and survived it, and you can get through this dip again, guys. We'll get through this together. We'll be here, trying to hold your hand every step of the way. I'm giving myself a pep talk too. Let's just be honest about it, right? Because you guys might, oh man, how does he do it? I go through the same emotions that you guys do, right? It's no different. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit, less susceptible to it after been in crypto for 8 years and lived through the ups and downs and did pretty well. It's like, okay, maybe I can handle it better than some. But I go through it too, guys. I go through it too. So we're all going through it together. Just remember that. So stay locked in, stay dialed in, stay subscribed to the channel, and we'll be back tomorrow with some other content. Nick will be back. We'll do some charts again. That's not my thing, so I wasn't able to do any charts, but we'll do charts, maybe talk about some altcoins. Who knows, maybe the market will be green tomorrow. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? All right, guys, thanks for joining in today. Hope you enjoyed the solo stream here, and until next time.